Welcome to today's RUC People, and I'm delighted to be joined by Jackie de la Porte in the comfort of their lovely home. So welcome, Jackie.
Thank you very much, Russell.
Well, you should be saying welcome to me. I'm in your house.
Yes,
so
no, thank you.
Great to have you with us. So, Jackie, tell us about this place. How long have you been here, and your family?
Okay, so Russell, we moved here, I think it's about 6.5 years ago. And before that, we'd lived in Constantia, and before that, Newlands, and before that, Rondebosch. So we've been in 28 years of marriage. This is our fourth house.
Wow. Okay.
So we moved here mostly because I think it was closer to Guy's work. Guy works out at the airport. And we're closer to my parents who live in Milnerton. And at the time, Luke was moving to Abbott's College. So it was much easier to move here and be here and be, yeah.
Cool. And Jackie, are you born and bred in Cape Town? Tell us about your family.
No, I'm not. I'm a Joburger originally. I was born in Johannesburg, and my family lived on a small holding in a place called Buccleuch, which was halfway between Joburg City and Pretoria.
Famous interchange.
Yes, it is actually.
Where the M1 meets the M1, I think,
That's
and the
it.
M3, and yes.
But when we were there long time ago, it was all small holdings. So my dad was breeding dogs, and we grew up. It was really lovely, and it was. I had a horse and 5 acres, and it was just a very rural area at the time. It's not like that anymore.
And you and any siblings?
Yes, so I have, I'm the eldest, and I have a brother who's 2 years younger than me, and he lives in Johannesburg. In fact, 2 kilometers from where we all grew up. He's living there with his family, and my sister Philippa lives in Canada with her family.
Right.
So I'm the one here staying in Cape Town.
Right. And did you do all your schooling in Johannesburg?
Yeah, I did. I went to a small school in Halfa House, and then went to high school at Sandown, and I didn't go to university. I did a tour guiding diploma for 1 year. In fact, it was cancelled after 1 year.
Oh.
I think due to lack of interest. This was the mid-'80s. And
Lack of interest by
the students.
Shame, okay.
I think we might have started with about 20 students, and by the end of the year there were about 10, so they cancelled the course. And then I got into tourism. I worked for a company that went to the Kruger Park and did day tours to Soweto and Johannesburg. And yeah.
So you're a tour guide based in Joburg?
Yes.
Working for a tour company?
For a tour company. So I think I did that for about 2 years or so. But during that time, I went to Australia when I was 18 for a 3-month holiday. We had family friends that lived there.
Which part of Australia?
Sydney.
Right.
And then I went up the Gold Coast and did what was then like a Contiki tour.
Very famous.
Yes.
All the young Australians.
So I did that, and I went to New Zealand for a couple of weeks as well, and came back, and the travel bug had bitten. So I came back to South Africa, and thank goodness I was working for that company, that tourism company. And then I got into hotels. I got a job with Southern Sun.
Oh, wow.
So my intention was to save as much money as I could to go and travel, because South Africa to me at that time was, it was the mid-'80s. And having my first trip overseas to Australia when I was 18 just really blew my mind that there was this whole world out there that just... wow, was just so vastly different to what I'd grown up with. And I needed to get out and see more. So I was motivated to come home, work, and travel again. So, yeah.
So Southern Sun. And so when did you meet Guy along the way?
Oh, yes. So funny enough, I met Guy in Cape Town.
Okay.
And the interesting thing is, Guy also went to Half a House Primary.
Ah. But at
So
different times?
Yes. Well, he was actually there at the same time as me, but he's 2 years older than me.
Right. So did you know him?
No, but I knew we have a lot of friends in common, or I knew that his friends had younger brothers and sisters, and I was in the same class as those younger brothers and sisters. So we met in Cape Town. He was a silent partner in a restaurant, and my sister was waitressing there.
Ah.
And I had just come back from, I'd been living in Israel for a year with an ex-boyfriend, an Israeli, and I'd come back to Cape Town, and my sister said, come to the restaurant on Friday night. The people there are all your age. And so I went and I met Guy, and then it turned out that we'd been to the same primary school at the same time. But yeah, it was a small little farm school. You would take your shoes off when you got there. There were maybe about 150, 200 kids at the time. So that's where I met Guy, at that restaurant.
And we have another family member here, I see.
Jessie has come to join us. Hey, Jess. She'll be fine.
So you had a travel bug there for a while. So
yes.
And where else did you manage to go?
So I worked in the hotel for about 3 years and managed to save up enough money to travel to the UK. So in fact, I think I was 21 years old, and I went to meet some friends, and I ended up backpacking around Europe for 2.5 years.
2.5 years?
Yes.
Wow. You must have some stories to tell from that.
Yeah, I think it was an amazing experience for me. I really, coming from South Africa, this was the late 80s, and it was white South Africans were... If we weren't mixed up, people confused us with Australians or New Zealanders, our accents, which didn't always go down well, as you can imagine. But I had an amazing time. I worked in London a lot because that was where the money was. And
again, in tourism.
And tourism, or more in pubs and restaurants and hotels.
Yes.
And also having a South African passport, one couldn't always work legally. So, so what was left for us was hotels, bar work, that kind of stuff.
They pay you cash.
Yes. So I have some stories about that. But anyway, so I did that, and then I went through Europe on my own for about 2 months. I went to Amsterdam, Italy, Switzerland, and I made my way to Israel because everyone at the time was saying, if you got homesick, don't go back to South Africa, go to Israel. The weather's gorgeous, you can get good work. So I ended up going to Israel, and I worked on a moshav, which is hard manual labor. But I worked for an amazing family, and what I would do was I would work for them for a couple of months, picking nectarines, peaches, packing fruit, doing all that kind of stuff. We lived in a container. In those days, containers weren't. Container living isn't what it was now. And there would be a whole lot of volunteers from all over the world. You would meet really, really interesting people. I'd work for about 3 months, and then I'd go traveling. And I went to Turkey for a couple of months. I went to Greece. I'd go back to the UK. And then the family that I worked for would phone me up and say, we need you. And they'd pay for me to fly back to Israel. And I'd be there for another couple of months. And
Wow. So this travel bug is interesting. Was that typical of your peers at the time, or was there something about you that just you wanted to see the world and you got a taste for it, and then
I think there were two things. I had older cousins that had travelled, and when I heard their stories, I was quite intrigued. And then I think also that just coming from South Africa at that era and just thinking, wow, this is, there's something out there. There's something more to life than living in sunny South Africa. Yeah. So, and I think that that going to Australia first when I was 18, coming back, and that really was when the bug bit, and then later on. So I think it was...
And were your parents thinking, Jackie, you know, are you going to do something with your life? Ever going to get a job and settle down, or, you know?
Yes, I think they were. A lot of the time they were worried. I always laugh because I'd phone my mother and say... and this is a time before internet.
Yes.
This was a time of writing letters.
Exactly. And you're away, you know, you send a letter, it takes 3 weeks, or you make a phone call that costs the earth, you know, and it's 2 minutes, you know.
Yes, and you'd make a phone call or collect charges, and you'd have to hope that your parents were at home. And I would laugh because I'd phone and I'd say to my mother would speak to me and I'd say, I'm going to Israel tomorrow. I wouldn't give them much warning about where I was going. She'd go, oh no, I don't think your father will like that.
I wasn't asking permission.
No. And then my dad would get on the phone and then my dad would go, are you going to Israel? That's fantastic. I've always wanted to go there. So I think my parents were proud of what I did. They were happy for me. They could see that I was doing what I really wanted to do. I was funding it all myself, so I wasn't phoning home for money. And I was just learning so much. Every experience really, really was a good one for me. And just, broadening everything, So
for how long did this sort of, you know, nomadic lifestyle go on until you eventually, you know, made your way to Cape Town, I guess?
Yes, yeah. So I came home, I think I was 24 or so. I went back to Johannesburg. My family was still there. And my brother was at UCT. And I got a job with Southern Sun in Johannesburg at Gold Reef City Hotel. I was there. And then my brother said, hey, Jax, come to Cape Town. It's so cool. And we'd been here on holiday as children, and we always loved it. And we thought, why on earth do we live in Johannesburg? We'd always ask my father, why do we live in Johannesburg? This place is such a dump. So anyway, so the opportunity came to move to Cape Town. My brother was here living in OBS, and I moved in with him and a group of friends, student friends, which didn't last long. And then I got a job with Avis car rental. And so once again in the hospitality industry. And soon after that, I got myself a flat and was living, I loved my life here, 25, living in Cape Town.
And been here ever since?
And been here ever since.
Right. Met Guy?
I met Guy eventually because... I think I met Guy as 29. So in that time, I had met my Israeli boyfriend. We were together for quite some time and went to live in Israel with him for a year. And I think that was a big one for my parents. Because being with an Israeli who's Jewish, I was considering converting.
Oh, really? Okay.
So our last year together, I said, I'll go to Israel with you. And I will study Hebrew, and I went to the Ulpan there. So I learned all about the culture and everything. Thank goodness I'd been there before, so I had my own friends. I had this family that were very good to me. And that was a huge thing because living in a country as someone's partner, learning the language, the culture, being part of their family is a totally different experience compared to being a 21-year-old backpacking, and it was just a totally different experience. So
I can imagine.
So after a year I said, you know what, I said that I would come here, I would try it, and it didn't work, and so I came home.
It didn't work, the relationship?
Yeah, the relationship didn't work. And I just thought, no, let me rather come home, and and came home feeling very much on the shelf. I think I was 28.
Oh, it's almost all over, Jackie.
It was all over. And I think that's a few months later, I was working for Avis again. And then my sister said, come to the restaurant where I'm working. The people are all your age. See, it was all that whole...
we'll match you up with somebody.
Yes, we'll match you up with someone, and not all is lost. Yeah, and that's where I met Guy.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I gather you guys got married. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about Guy?
Yes. So when I met Guy, he was an industrial property broker for a big company here in Cape Town, and he had also lived in Johannesburg, and then his family moved to Durban when he was about 13 or 14 years old. Hey, Jesse. And then he moved to Cape Town when he was in his early 20s. So when I met him, he was pretty much settled here and quite happy. And we met and we got engaged, I think about a year later. So we got married when I was 29 and he was 31.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And then had Luke.
No, Luke. we travelled quite a bit together. Of
course.
Yeah, of course.
So was he also a travel?
No, he'd never been overseas before.
Right. So you're inducting him.
So we were very lucky. Our honeymoon, we went to Thailand for 6 weeks.
That's a long honeymoon.
It was a long honeymoon.
Wow.
It was really, really great. My brother was working and living in Hong Kong at the time, and him and a group of friends joined us for about 2 weeks for our honeymoon. We had an amazing time, and then came home, and then we would travel every year for a short while.
Wow.
And then Luke arrived 5 years later.
Right. Okay.
And so, so that was then a whole new chapter.
Yes. So tell us about Luke.
So Luke, today is his birthday. He's 22 years old. So I can't believe 22, but anyway, that's another thing. So Luke was diagnosed with autism when he was 3. And that opened up a whole other journey for us as a family. And I think just before Luke, in the year prior to Luke being diagnosed, we had lost a premature baby who had been born when I was 6 months pregnant. He lived for 10 days and sadly passed away. And then a few months later, I fell pregnant again, and I think and that was when we were realizing that there were some unusual behaviors that Luke was showing up with. So he was then diagnosed with autism, and my third pregnancy didn't end well either. So I think for quite a while, I felt like we were living in this tunnel, and every time we kind of looked up, someone would go, "Oh, no, not done with you yet, not done with you." So there was like 3 really big things that happened. 3
pregnancies, 2 of which failed.
Yes.
And then Luke, where there was issues.
Yeah.
They must have been very tough.
Yeah, so it was a time of our lives where we were, we kind of were just dealing with everything that was happening. And Luke being diagnosed with autism was a big thing in the beginning, I think. But as time went by and we both threw ourselves into finding out more about it, what do we need to do, where was he going to go to school? That was a huge challenge, and the early therapies. So everything was new to us. It was, quite a, you've got this precious baby boy, and it was very challenging. But we were very lucky in that we found an organization called SNAP that do a lot of therapies. It's a whole mix of different therapies. It's an early intervention program. So they were incredibly helpful. We did a lot of work with Luke then. He got into Vista Nova, and we could breathe we felt for quite a long time, we knew what we were dealing with.
Yeah.
And we could just...
Did you have supports? I mean, are there sort of networks of other parents with children with autism who support each other and learn from each other, etc.?
Yeah, I think that still is one of the best things that ever happened to me. That I found at Vista Nova. Vista Nova was initially a school for children with cerebral palsy. And when Luke started there, they were only starting to take in children on the autistic spectrum. So I had, and there was a parent support group. So it really was amazing to have this support where you didn't feel so alone. People had been through it before. You didn't feel like you were the crazy parent. And I think I got involved in the fundraising there as well. So that was my start. And I was the chairperson there at Friends of Vista Nova for 5 years. And that was an amazing experience because I wasn't just thinking about me and my situation. There were a lot of, I was doing something positive, something active. I was involved in something bigger than myself. And really, I met such wonderful people. And I still have those good, solid friends from those early years. And also people that just accepted Luke for who he was and made life a little bit easier for all of us.
Yeah.
Oh.
And Jackie, was church part of your life growing up? And because I want to come back to Luke, because I think church has been a supportive space for Luke. I know he's a lot of friends,
Yes.
But how did you find your way to even before RUC, was church part of your life in Joburg? I imagine you weren't necessarily going to church every Sunday when you were tripping around the world. But
no, it's funny you mentioned that. Growing up, I did go to church. We grew up Anglicans, and there was a Sunday school, and a lot of people in our neighborhood, our family friendship group, were all at the same church. So I think that's where I got the sense of community from that I was looking for when I eventually came to RUC, was going to a church where everybody knew you, everyone knew your family. So I grew up with that. But I do remember in my late teens kind of like, this is very uncool. Do I have to go every Sunday? My father would bribe us with ice lollies. If you go, then you'll get an ice lolly afterwards, that kind of thing. Yeah. And eventually in my late teens, I stopped going. But then, funny enough, being overseas, especially in England at Christmas time, wow, being there, Christmas is just so vastly different in December.
Cold and dark.
It's cold and dark, the Christmas music, and it was quite sad. I felt very homesick. I felt incredibly homesick. And I found my way to a church. I found a lot of comfort. And then with going to Israel as well, Israel being a very spiritual place, the home of, so much history, and looking at religion from a different perspective, and also being with a Jewish person, now questioning religion, but then realizing that the relationship and living there wasn't for me, coming home and eventually finding my way to RUC many years later.
So how did you find your way to RUC?
So I think, like a lot of people, we had a child and we suddenly realized that we would like to have him baptized at some stage, which interestingly enough for us only happened when Luke was about 15 or 16. But Guy and I were looking for a church. We felt we were living in Rondebosch and we felt we were looking for something. And we tried out a couple of different churches in the Rondebosch, Claremont area. And somehow something about RUC really struck home for us. And it was... And in fact, that was just at the time where Luke was... we were realizing that Luke was on the spectrum and also going through our losses. And at the time, there was amazing support from Robert and other people at RUC that we were new to the church, and just the support that we had from the church was at that time was good for us. Yeah.
Yeah. And you've been around ever since, I think.
Yes. Yeah, we have.
And for Luke, he's obviously growing up. You said it's his birthday today. He's
Yes.
22. I'm actually hoping to interview Luke. We're in discussions about that.
Yeah.
But it sounds like he's really begun to flourish and, find his way in life. Do you want to say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think, you asked about church and Luke earlier. One of the things was I wanted Luke to... I want him also to be part of communities and not just to be stuck in an autism community. The one thing that I learned early on is that, yes, a child might be on the autistic spectrum, and it's good to teach other people around you, schools, your communities, get them to advocate for him. But the world doesn't always bend for you. You've also got to do a little bit of the work. So that was one of the reasons why I wanted him to, to be brought up in a church community, was that everybody would get to know him, he would get to know them, he would get comfortable, and it's worked, not in a way I expected it to work. But, he doesn't go to church that regularly, but the connections that he's made, the friendships, and that has been very, very important. And the support that continues, even though he doesn't go that often. I think that's been really what has worked. So I'm quite happy with that.
But he's done well at school and now he's off to university.
Yes. So school was a huge challenge, but the fact that he's now going to UCT I am incredibly proud of him. He matriculated at the end of 2019. So he had applied to UCT for 2020. Unfortunately, didn't get in. He was a few points short. And we, with some advice from Sir Ellen, we convinced him to go to film school, because that had always been a big love. And at the end of that year, he said, no, this is not for him. And I said, well, what do you want to do? And he said, no, I really want to go to UCT. So I said, well, then you've got to work at making that happen. And he contacted them. They said, you need to redo your 3 worst matric subjects, which he did. And I really take my hat off to him, redoing that online school. At a time where we were going through COVID, everything was difficult for everybody. And he stuck it out. He improved his marks immensely. And didn't get in once again due to technicalities last year, so he was allowed his 1 gap year, which I think was also a good thing for him, just to mature a little. And finally got in for this year. So he starts, middle of February, and doing a BA in English and History. So
sounds right up his street.
Right up his alley.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
And so, Jackie, obviously, after having Luke and with some of the challenges, with his condition, what happened with your working life? Did you, because I do know that things took a bit of a different direction.
Yes, so I think that my working life, Luke's early years, everything was really about Luke, because having a child on the spectrum, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of going to and from therapies, different programs. He had a tutor, facilitators, all that kind of stuff. I was constantly having to meet with schools. He changed schools quite a few times. It takes up a lot of mental energy. Yes. To be honest with you, it took up a lot of my mental energy. Yeah. And the fundraising work that I did at Vista Nova was a good distraction.
Yeah.
and good to feel that I was part of something.
Yeah.
And then later on, I started a business making bags where I felt like, I think when Luke was much older, I think he was maybe 14, 15 or so. And I felt like I needed to get creative. I needed to do something. And so I started, my mom is very creative, and my mom taught me how to make a particular kind of bag. So we started doing that together, and then employed a seamstress. And in fact, the seamstress, Kaya, was our home helper. And I asked her if she wanted to learn something else. What other skills would she like to learn? And she said, no, she'd love to sew. So I sent her and her cousin for sewing lessons. And then my mom and I started teaching them to make bags. And then, unfortunately, my mother stopped working with me as she got older and arthritis kicked in. And then it's just now Kai and myself. And we do bags and tableware, mostly using shwe fabrics and other African prints. And that feeds our creativity, yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I know you've also had a connection with Pilani.
Yes. So my connection was Robert, in his wonderful way, saying, would you like to come and have a look at this project with me? And that was also maybe about 7-8 years ago. And going out to have a look and seeing what Robert was doing and the whole storytelling. So it was storytelling. Maybe
not all our listeners will know about Pilani. Just say a little bit more
Yeah,
about
so Pilani they've got different nursery schools, and they've got different points in the community in Khayelitsha and Langa, where they've got small pre-primary schools, and they've also got facilities. They help mothers. They've also got dentists, doctors, that kind of thing. So it's little centres in town, NGO. It's NGO based, and they're in Khayelitsha and Langa. So I would go as a storyteller and would go on a Wednesday morning and be welcomed by a class of, or probably 2 classes of about 80 children, all shouting "Happy Wednesday, Happy Wednesday." And I would read a story and the teachers would translate. And then we would get the children to enact the story. And I had a whole lot of dress-up clothing and all that sort of stuff. So that would be, I absolutely loved it. Got to know the teachers really, really well and the children.
Wonderful.
And it was an amazing experience. So I did that for a couple of years, yeah.
And Jackie, post Luke, was at the end of your travel, or do you still have the travel bug? And have you and Guy managed, and Luke managed to do any travel over the last few years? You know, after that dominating your life for so many years.
Yeah, I think we didn't. Traveling has been in more local in Cape Town and South Africa in the last couple of years, with being focused on Luke's school and all that sort of stuff. I think I went to Italy for my 40th birthday. I did go there for about 3 weeks and did some traveling on my own with some friends, my cousin. But we would love to travel again. But having said that, 2 years ago, we bought a camping trailer. So what we've discovered is Luke actually hates camping. Hates it. And I think during COVID, we realized we obviously couldn't travel anymore, but maybe to explore Cape Town in a different way. Instead of self-catering and that kind of thing, to buy a camping trailer and to go away on weekends or for a couple of days longer. And then it worked for all of us because Luke would stay at home. He gets to be 20 or whatever, and a young man staying at home looking after the animals and inviting his friends around, and he's got a bit of space from us. And then Guy and I would go and explore. So That's been the extent of our traveling for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
But we would love to go again, and especially as Luke's older now and has a huge fascination for history, to travel again. Yeah.
And Jackie, what does fun look like for you? I mean, any other hobbies? You know, what kind of things bring you alive?
So something that not everyone knows about me is that I love, I'm a dragon boat paddler. And that is one of my main hobbies.
So tell us more about that. What is dragon boat paddling?
So I belong to a team called the Amabela Bells.
Okay.
And we train at the waterfront. And I think it originated in China, in the Asian countries. So it's a very large boat. You're sitting 2 people per seat. And we've got about 20 people in our team. And the team was originally started by, it's a team of women that are breast cancer survivors. And about 3-4 years ago, I read about them in our local newspaper. And they'd gone overseas, this team, and they'd won in this World Championships. And I was quite impressed by this, because I looked at the photograph of these women and they all looked in their late 40s. And I thought, oh, if they can all be doing this, then I think I'd like to join. So I contacted them and I was totally bitten. The bug bit me right from the start. So I do that. We train twice a week.
Wow.
And once again, that's also a community, an amazing community of interesting, fascinating women. And not everybody has to be a breast cancer or a cancer survivor. There are lots of other people like myself who haven't had cancer and have joined.
Well, that sounds like fun.
Yeah.
And what else? I know you have some animals in the house.
Yes, so the animals have always been a huge part of our family. I think animals they all have their own characters and their own personalities. And Tinkerbell is Luke's cat. In fact, she sleeps on his chest like a stalker. When you walk past, she's on his chest looking at him and, with absolute adoration. So the animals are a huge part of our family. And that's another hobby is hiking, walking. I do that quite regularly. Yoga is another interest of mine that I've been doing, in fact, since I was about 16, since I was in high school. I found it a very healthy thing, especially a very calming thing when life can be very not so calm and we need to take deep breaths. I think yoga is my go-to thing, and it's been with me from when I was about 16.
Sure.
Yeah.
And Jackie, what's on the horizon for you? Any sort of big plans? What's coming up that's exciting you?
Well, I think, Russell, I must say we're quite excited about 2023. It's a new chapter for us. With Luke going into university, we now know where he's going to be for as long as he's there and enjoying it, and he's happy. So I feel as a mom, I can now go, oh, okay, you go do your thing and I can expand on what I've been doing. And that is my business. I would really like to grow it and give it my full attention. So there's setting up a website and all those kind of things. So that's my big thing personally. And for Guy, it's just to continue doing what he does. He's a property broker at the airport. So that's his full focus. And then our camping keeps us sane.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's it.
Well, thank you so much, Jackie. It's been great to get to know you a bit more and hear more about the journey.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.